Hey, 4-Pack fans. We appreciate the support y'all have given us so far, and we want to give back. Beginning with this episode, we're running a giveaway for the month of July. Give us a subscribe on YouTube and comment Hot Take Summer on this or any video we post this month, and you'll be able to win $25 from one of us on CashApp. Multiple comments do not equal multiple entries, but if you guys want to stop in and chat, we won't stop you. Alright, welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy 4-Pack. I'm your host, Ian Power, joined as always by Matt Vitale and Frankie Santiago. We are bringing you another mock draft episode this week. Throwing one out there for the standard scoring crowd, for everyone who's still playing fantasy football in 2014.
Yeah, I gotta say, looking at the rankings, it's a stark difference, but you know, if you're gonna be a fantasy show, you gotta play to all the crowds.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, big thing that I would say for people who are still doing standard scoring, maybe talk to your league mates, think about switching over to at least half point, because that is sort of the way the industry as a whole is going. It's getting harder and harder to find good standard scoring advice. But
yeah, like I said, for me, I was a standard guy for the longest time. I was never a fan of PPR, just because I felt like it glorified those like mid-tier wide receivers who were just catching so many balls. But when you look at the half point, it really, catching a ball in the NFL game, it's not easy. There should be some reward to it, and it kind of elevates those guys who are multi-threat talents like Christian McCaffrey and whatnot to the elite status they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, half is that happy middle ground where it's like you're not getting those guys who are getting those, like that target volume Allen Robinson did last season where he's getting
150.
I think you see the industry gravitating towards that, and there's a reason that's the trend that you're seeing right now. As for the picks we have, Frankie is picking out of the 7 slot, Vitale is picking out of 8, and I'm picking out of 11. We did the randomizer per usual, and we are drafting through the Fantasy Pros mock draft software. We've said it before, we'll say it again. If you're going to do lots of mock drafts, they're probably the best one to use because they are the closest that you can get to simulating a live draft.
Yeah.
Before we launch into the draft, though, I just want to touch on a few things. One, make sure to follow us at our socials if you like what we're bringing here as far as information. The show social for Twitter is the Fantasy 4-Pack. So that's Fantasy, the number 4-Pack. I'm F4P_Ian. He's the Foon.
The Foon.
FPOON.
Yeah.
And he is Senpai Koala. You can follow us there for all of our takes on sports and random life things, or just sports from the Fantasy 4-Pack show Twitter. And make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified as soon as new content drops. And a couple of news items I want to touch on as well before we launch. One, we have our first COVID-related holdout for the season. Chiefs guard Laurent Duvernay-Tardif is going to sit out due to COVID. From what I understand, he's also a medical doctor on the side. So because of his interaction with patients and everything, he doesn't want to bring that risk factor to his team.
Wait, he's a medical doctor in addition to an NFL player?
Yeah, he's
good for him.
He's sitting out to, one, help his community, and two, to make sure that if he's being exposed to it more, that he doesn't bring it into the locker room. So he was only the 50th rated or 50th best rated guard according to PFF last season, so I don't think it's a massive hit for the Chiefs O-line. But it does show that there are players who are going to be doing this, so it's something to keep an eye on as we get closer to the season, because we could see a situation where there are, some superstar players, even just some regular star players, that sit out for COVID-related reasons, and that's going to shorten the draft board a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's definitely why the change you made to our redraft league, where you opened up the IR spots to allow for COVID-related incidents specifically, is going to be important for this year, and something all league managers should be looking into.
Yeah, I thought about it when the NFL announced that they were going to be opening up basically the commissioner's exempt list for players who get COVID, because there potentially could be a lot of that this season. That's the thing, we don't know, but you don't want to be in a situation where your league mates have to start dropping a 4th round draft pick or a 3rd round draft pick because they just don't have space on their bench and they need to start a lineup.
Yeah,
So-
that's why this year personally I'm drafting more for safety than anything. Like not even so far as like injury, but
Yeah.
like just those players who I know are gonna, be able to survive injury and also are in like good situations where they're not like fighting for touches with somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest news of the week, not big news for fantasy, but big news for football in general. Jamal Adams traded to the Seahawks for a haul.
Oh yeah,
2 first-round picks,
a third.
two first-round picks, a third, some player that I've Bradley McDougal, I think his name was.
Yeah, and the Jets are sending over Adams and a fourth.
Yeah, I mean,
it's.
I think it's a great deal for the Jets.
Yeah, like I said, if they're smart with those picks and they can start building around new young talent. You always hate to see a guy of Jamal Adams' talent go out of town, but when things aren't working, it's better to get something for your return as opposed to just let him.
And he was clearly unhappy there.
Yeah. So
hopefully,
hopefully, we get to see some more of a resurgence of the Legion of Boom or something like that out there. I think it's a great spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, as far as fantasy goes, this makes me. I wasn't uninterested in the Seattle defense before, but this makes me much more interested in owning them, just due to the fact that he is such an impactful defensive player, and Pete Carroll knows how to put a good defense together out there.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a little bit more of an impact team now. Like they are going to be a safer defensive option than they were before his addition.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, this is definitely more of just NFL news than fantasy. It doesn't affect me too much as far as how I'm approaching drafts, but I do like the idea of. I think with this deal we can almost safely assume that Clowney's probably not coming back with the contract that they just picked up from Adams, and with the fact they're going to need to re-sign him sooner rather than later. So Clowney is a good guy to keep an eye on to see if he goes to a defense and potentially makes a good defense into an elite defense this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final big news piece that I saw, at least, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, news is coming out of Philadelphia that if Alshon isn't ready to go to start the season, that we could see Arcega-Whiteside just fill right into that X role in that offense, opposite Deshaun Jackson. He wasn't great last season, and he's currently basically not being drafted because Jalen Reagor. If he and this is something to watch obviously as we get closer to the season, but if he is going to play a starting role in that offense, I'm interested in owning Arcega-Whiteside, especially with his what should be very low draft stock. He could be a sneaky way to get yourself a very high upside wide receiver on a team.
Yeah, he's definitely someone I would take a look at if you're somebody who's really going to hammer the running backs in the early rounds.
Yeah.
Try and get yourself like 3 or 4 deep by like the 7th round or something like that, and you really need wide receiver depth. He could be, like I said, I'm not expecting too much because I think we kind of know what he is and the team knows what he is.
Well, he was a rookie last year.
Right. But it already doesn't. They don't sound like too confident in him. Like I said, I think there's still opportunity for the kid. I'm just not. I'm not projecting him as like a breakout guy or a sleeper that could really win you a ship. I think he's just he's a good piece to have if you need the depth.
Yeah, I think that like the biggest part of that too is Carson Wentz is. I mean, he's had his issues obviously, but he's a talented quarterback. He's going to get his receivers the ball.
And they throw a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely a wait. It's interesting. It's someone who should be on fantasy players' radar, but it's a wait and see thing because if Alshon plays, I'm much less interested in Arcega-Whiteside. He's purely if Alshon sits, consider grabbing him with one of your last picks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless you guys have any news that I missed, I think we should kick this one off here.
Let's get it running.
All right. So. We'll read off the first couple picks for you guys, but Frankie, who are you thinking about while the computer makes these picks?
Well, I kind of. I mean, let's see if the same people who are usually there follow me.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be. It's definitely going to be a running back. It's not going to be a wide receiver. I think that especially this year, running back is the way that you kind of have to go unless there's.
Especially in standard.
Yeah, it's. I mean, especially with like the pass catching backs being in that first round, like you're gonna get and this is pretty much what I expected here.
Is your team named Team Fantasy Football Team?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of guys I like here.
Words.
Derrick Henry is probably going to be my pick. I do like Joe Mixon, though. I do think that Bengals offense is criminally underrated as far as like what they're going to do this year. It all depends on kind of that centerpiece in Joe Burrow. You've talked about how much you like him and how he could be that pop guy. I'm kind of in the same boat. And I think if he does, I think Mixon's going to thrive even more.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I just like the volume that Henry's going to get. I do think they're going to run him into the ground. And it's... I mean, he's like, I've always liked Henry, except last year when he wasn't scoring me points. But yeah, no, I'm going to pick Henry at 7 here and be happy with it.
He makes sense in standard, too. Like, Henry is someone who he becomes much more valuable in standard, where you're not getting disadvantaged by not having that pass-catching running back.
Yeah.
What are you thinking here about Tyler?
This one's a no-brainer for me. I was exact same 2 picks you were. The guy I was hoping for more so, Joe Mixon, ended up falling to me. I was kind of looking at it, I was like, I'm going to get a running back I'm happy with, but if it goes, like I said, if one more running back goes than I expect, if it's literally a run from 1 all the way to my pick, then I might be going for more of a, having to look at Chubb, Jacobs, those kinds of guys where you start getting a little bit more clear question marks.
Sure.
I think Joe Mixon has the good mix of talent and lack of competition that I like in a first-round running back. So, like I said, I'm just going to lock him up, and I'm not going to look back.
Right. Oh, wow, look at that, too. And then the guy that I was hoping for fell to me. So I am already well known by you guys as for my love affair for Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
I'm going to draft Nick Chubb happily at 11. He is another back like Derrick Henry where I think he has a lot more value. Not that I don't think he has value in half and full point, but I think he has a lot more value in standard point leagues where no one's getting credit for the passes they catch. So he doesn't have as big of a difference in points compared to some of those pass catching running backs.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to turn around at the 2 spot, and I'm going to mix it up a little bit here because I'm not usually drafting out of the 11 hole. And there's a guy that I really like on the boards. I think he's great in PPR, and I think he's great in standard. He's just, Julio is one of the best receivers in the league.
Yeah.
It's really tough to not take Julio at 2-2, especially given that when my next pick rolls around, because I've got this rollover here. My next pick rolls around. There's going to be other good running backs on the board still. I'm not terribly worried about not at least getting 2 guys that I like.
Yeah, when I was with that was a no-brainer pick for me, taking Julio there, because he is that elite level talent that we should. We've been projecting him for positive touchdown regression like every year, and it just keeps not happening. It's one of those things that there's not a reason for it not happening. It's just like poor luck and all these other factors.
Sure.
We're already projecting for Matty Ice to be better, but coming around here, I'm just basically looking at because there's a certain group of running backs here that I'm not going to see when my 3-8 comes around. So it's basically, do I want to invest in a guy like Sanders, Drake, Eckler, Gurley, Carson? I was kind of actually hoping. I was thinking about getting on the Aaron Jones train for a change. I'm just going to go ahead.
I pick before you.
Yep. I'm not too broken up about it. It was like one of those things where I was tempted for a moment, but I let it pass. Sure. I'm just going to go with the guy I do like, a young talent, Miles Sanders. Once again, not much competition behind him, and Philly is not a great defense, so they're going to have to score, and he's part of that passing game.
All right, so I am taking a running back here, but
not Travis Kelce.
I didn't get the chance to ask you guys back when, but what do you guys think of Michael Thomas going at 4?
I think that's where you're going to see him going in a lot of leagues this year.
I just think it's too high for standard. I think you should see it around that 7-8 pick where we're at. That's where I think it makes logical sense to take him, because I would take Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Henry, probably mixing over him. But I think at least when you get to 8 and you get to Mixon and those in like Chubb, Jacobs, when you get into that range, all right, maybe now it's time to invest in the elite wide receiver.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm going to take my second running back, and it's going to be Kenyon Drake. Kind of the same logic I had with Mixon, except I have a little bit more confidence in that Arizona offense. I think they're more solidified as one of those juggernauts to watch in 2020. They're going to be running a lot of plays. Kenyon showed he can perform last season. I don't think there's a reason not to take him there, especially in the mid-second.
That is a run on players that just went there. That's the downside for us all picking the second half. There's going to be chunks of players that go off the board.
Yeah,
so in between picks, we had Eckler, Kittle, Mahomes, Evans, CEH, Gordon, Cooper, Moore, Beckham, and then Lamar all go off the board in between Frankie's 2 picks. So,
well, luckily the guy I want.
Third, we saw 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends, and a handful of good other receivers and running backs go off the board.
Yeah, luckily the guy I want is still there.
AJ Brown.
No, I am actually going to do something that I don't typically do, and I'm going to take a third running back here. I am going to take Mr. Todd Gurley. I think he's on a prove-it contract, and as I've said with my, well, not my first 3 picks, but the Kenny Drake pick, I mean, it's going to be a pop year for that offense. They don't have as many injury issues. Matty Ice is going to be back in form. He's got Calvin Ridley, who's going to have his pop year. I mean, there's like, that offense is going to be honestly, it might be the best in the league.
Yeah. Honestly, I was looking at Gurley there too to try and do the 3 running back stack and then just try and go for those middle tier running backs. I feel like there's a little bit of a drop. I'm not too interested in the guys right now. I'm more interested in what they have on the board right now for receivers. Like I said, I don't like AR-15. I'm not a huge, I do not like AJ Brown. So I'm going to go for the guy who they have third on there, and I'm going to go ahead and take Adam Thielen here, who I think is still just, he has been playing lights out. And then last year he was hurt, and the offense as a whole wasn't running well, so they shifted more and put the weight on Cook, who then got injured again. I'm projecting him to come back to form as a top guy now that they lost the elite talent of Stephon Diggs. Back to you, Ian. What are you looking at here?
Well, there's still some wide receivers here that I didn't expect to be here. The guy I was hoping was going to fall to me was Chris Carson, and obviously he did not.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to take Juju here. I know I'm doubling up on wide receivers and standard scoring, but I'm not going to reach at 311, especially when I have another pick coming up at 4-2. I'll use 311 to lock up a receiver that I like and one that I am not confident would fall to me at 4-2.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 4-2, I can go ahead and just lock up another running back. I'm not super confident in this guy, but in the 4th round, I'm much more willing to take a shot at him than I would be in the 3rd or the 2nd. I'm going to take Leonard Fournette here.
Okay.
Sort of same mindset that I have with him as some of these other not flashy, grind-out running backs. I'm not really worried about his workload on the ground as much. I think he's going to lose some volume because I don't think the Jags are going to be a very good team. But he should still get the lion's share of the carries on the ground. And when I really look at it, he's someone who, for me, he should be able to produce at least well enough to really make me feel good about that running back 2 spot on my team. And then I'll just draft some more depth later on just to make sure that he's going to hold it together.
Yeah.
For everyone who just heard, sorry, we have a small puppy in the apartment this week, and she is sad that we're not giving her attention.
Yeah, she is just all over the place. So this pick, I'm going to go with a guy I don't usually end up going with, but could produce at high levels, and I'm definitely not going to see him by the time my next pick comes up. So I'm just going to go ahead and lock in David Johnson as my 3rd running back. Just like I said, having him as my 3rd guy, I'm confident in that. And like I said, I feel like there's a lot of quality receivers in the later rounds, and now I don't have to look at running back for a little bit, so I can just wide receiver.
Yep.
Or go for a tight end if the receivers aren't there.
I'm actually very happy you took David Johnson there, because you did not take the guy that I wanted to take.
You're going to take Calvin.
I am going to take Calvin.
Yeah.
And having Calvin, I may or may not go for the stack. I mean, we've talked about stacking before. If it happens, it happens. But I mean, I'm never unhappy to have Matty Ice on my team. Even on down years, he does still put up numbers as far as yardage and touchdowns. So picking Calvin here, I mean, I think a lot of those balls are going to go his way. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how I feel about Calvin.
No, that's fair. I mean, I like Calvin Ridley. I especially like him if you can get him in that middle of the 4th round. I think he's a high upside guy. Plays on a fast offense. He plays on a high scoring offense. I don't. He's someone who I'm very. If I do go that running back earlier in drafts, he's someone who I am looking at as my first or second wide receiver for my team. When that time of the draft comes around.
Yeah, and then speaking of another receiver, I am going to pick up Tyler Lockett here. Another receiver I like.
Sure.
Safe quarterback. He is still the number one in that offense, despite my feelings towards Mr. Metcalf. I think he may be superseded this year, but for now, I think he is still that number one guy. But I guess we'll see how 2020 plays out.
All right, who are you looking at here, Vitelli? 5'8".
Yep. So I saw Lockett there, and there is interest. Like I said, he's a guy I do like, but there's a wide receiver I like more, and I don't really see anything else that's jumping off the page of me. So I'm going to go ahead and just lock up DJ Chark.
Sure.
For my second wide receiver off the board. I just think it's Jacksonville. The amount of times they're going to be behind in games and have to just throw, he could just be raking in garbage time touchdowns for your team.
Yeah, I mean, the Jaguars, as we've said, they're projected for a league low 4.5 wins, but they are still a bad team. They're going to have to throw if they want to stay in games, and he's really it for their wide receivers. I mean, they have some other no-name guys behind him, but he doesn't have a lot of competition for targets. So I love Chark going there. After Chark, we saw Dave Montgomery go off the board, and then Cam Akers. I like Dave Montgomery going where he did. Cam Akers, I think it's way too early for at 5'10".
Yeah.
Especially with the news coming out of Rams camp that the Rams want to use all of their running backs this year, kind of like how the 49ers did last year, where they want to make it a four-headed monster. I'm not willing to invest, even if maybe they're posturing. I'm not willing to invest in a running back that could be getting maybe 30% of the touches. So for me, and I just did reference that 49ers running back core, I'm going to go ahead and take Raheem Mostert there, who we did see break out a little bit last year. I know he and the 49ers are currently tiffing a little bit. They aren't really seeing eye to eye, but I think that's all going to be hashed out before the season starts, and I like the talent. I like the situation. And at 5'11", there's not a lot of other running backs kicking around that I really think would be as impactful as him. So I'm happy to take him as a third running back off the board. And then I will turn around at the 6-2 spot. And the guy I really wanted here went off the board in Kyler Murray.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping that Kyler was going to fall to me. There's not a lot of other running backs that I really care about. So I'm actually going ahead and I'm going to draft Michael Gallup here.
I don't hate it.
He's a forgotten guy with the addition of CeeDee Lamb to that off. Oh, I guess my tablet decided that I wanted Dak Prescott.
Yeah, it looked like you were on the zeros there. So
my tablet has a little bit of lag today, so it could just be that
I ran on a little bit long with your take there. That's why I usually, for me, like I said, with this, I just like to try and lock that in at 10, just so I don't have to worry about it. Like I already know who I was looking at, and I was pretty confident I was going to get him. I was between Gallup and other players. But this guy, I think, is another second-year player who could have a splash impact in the league in an offense that I think is going to throw more because they can't rely on their quarterback running and being a 1,000-yard rusher again. So I'm going to go ahead and take Hollywood Brown from Baltimore.
Sure.
He's a guy I hate to say that I'm buying into the hype videos, but just watching the footwork that kid has and the speed, the impact he made in a short season was outstanding. So I'm ready to buy in on him as my third wide receiver in the 6th round. I think it's very safe value.
Yeah. I mean, as I kind of said when I talked about him in the breakout show, he's someone who can win you weeks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about me stacking Mr. Matthew Ice with Calvin Ridley, but I do see another guy I really like on the board this year, and pretty much every year it's Russell Wilson. He's just kind of one of those safety quarterbacks where he doesn't always have those blowout numbers, but he takes care of the ball. He's never really an injury risk, and he has really good receivers that are capable of having those pop games. So, I mean, typically I find myself in most redraft leagues picking either him or Matty Ice in leagues where I don't have Mahomes.
Sure. And that is something that our viewers should keep in mind too, because we've seen this in years past in our league. We're seeing it a lot in mock drafts this year. The 6th round always seems to be the round where you start seeing a lot of these quarterbacks go off the board. keep in mind there is still good value in this. I mean, I obviously didn't want to pick Dak at 6'2", but I did. I'm fine with it at the end of the day, but there is a lot of value to be had still in the 6th round. So if you decide, and there are a lot of quarterbacks later in drafts that you can take.
Mm-hmm.
So if you decide to wait on quarterbacks and don't take one in the 6th, you can then still grab an impact player in the 6th and circle around and get like a Big Ben or a, Baker Mayfield or Ryan Tannehill like 4 rounds later, and it could really differentiate your team from some of the other guys in your league.
Yeah. So after your pick, DeAndre Swift, Sony Michel, Michael Gallup, Deshaun Watson, who I was actually hoping might swing back around to me.
Yep.
Boyd, Deebo Samuel, Evan Ingram, Jordan Howard, Tevin Coleman, Keshawn Vaughn, Hunter Henry, and A.J. Green. What are you looking
And
at?
then Ronald Jones.
Rojo.
I am beating you guys to the punch this time.
You
I
guys,
did not
like-
really want to
I was
reach
like-
on him,
I was
but sometimes you do have to. If you are really sold on a player, you do have to reach a little bit.
Yep.
And 7 is a bit pricey, but I am confident in that Tampa offense. For the most part, referencing my Mike Evans take from last week, that's pretty much the only part I'm not sold on. I mean, also Tom Brady as far as, just overall like passing volume. But I mean, I think Godwin's going to eat it. I think Jones is going to eat both tight ends. And I did want to get a share of him on my team.
Yeah, here I'm torn between some running backs and some of the wide receivers out there. I was looking at Brandon Cooks, so I'm not a huge fan of having the running back and the receiver on the same team, but I am gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go and lock him up just as a little bit more of a safer wide receiver,
Sure.
Since I have so much young talent that is a little less proven, in case any of them have a regression year. Another guy I was looking at was taking Kareem Hunt there in the off chance that he ends up taking, like, if something happens to Chubb, like COVID or injury, he is now the starting running back on a team that is much upgraded, and he's already shown he has top, running back 1 upside.
I do like Kareem Hunt a little bit less in standard point leagues because he is going to be a primary pass catching role. I went ahead and took Julian Edelman there, someone else who I like less in standard drafts, and I think that's why you see Jules still on the board at 7-11. Because he doesn't get credit for the high volume that he's doing, just the yardage. So he is worth a little bit less in standard point, but I still like his usage in the offense. I like the fact that when he's healthy, he's going to be a focal point. So I'm going to take him, and then I'm going to spin back around and grab Marvin Jones at 8-2 and really lock up my wide receiver core, give myself 4 good wide receivers to go into the season with, and generally, for the most part, 4 guys that I'm not really worried about as far from an injury standpoint, with the exception of Jules.
Yeah, I must confess, I was hoping that Jones would fall to me.
Yeah, so I actually went and I played the ADP game a little bit right there. I'm going to go ahead and lock up Matty Ice. I was looking at it, and he felt like an appropriate time to take him was the 7th, but I was not. I was okay to lose him because, like I said, Aaron Rodgers still on the board, Josh Allen still on the board, Carson Wentz still on the board. So I was okay to lose him. I looked at your team. You already had a quarterback. Kyler Murray's already gone. You have a quarterback. So I felt like I could play that turnaround game and just wait for him to come back around to me. I'll go ahead and lock him up now in the 8th, which I think is a tremendous value for a guy on an offense that's going to score.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to gamble on a pick and hope they come back around to you in the next round, especially if you don't care if you don't get them, it's never a bad thing to do that because it means that you get to use another earlier pick to try and strengthen your depth.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick a guy here that I like a little bit less year than I did. Less this year than I did last year, and that is Mr. John Brown on Buffalo. I'm still not completely sold on Josh Allen, but I think that they are kind of the team to beat in the AFC East now. I mean, we'll see how Cam does on the Pats, but I do think they are going to throw the ball a lot. Clearly, they don't want to use Devin Singletary for whatever reason it may be. But I mean, he's kind of like their deep ball threat. Just with Stephon Diggs, he's capable of. He's going to be kind of like that Mike Evans role where he's going to get those either boom weeks or he's going to not score you a lot of points. And I'm one of those people who's willing to take the risk on that.
I honestly couldn't disagree with you more. I think that's overdrafting John Brown, and you're going to be if you reach that much on him, especially in leagues where in PPR leagues, in standard leagues, it matters a little bit less just because he's not going to get blown up by possession guys. But that offense doesn't throw as much as you think it does, and John Brown isn't even the primary guy down the field anymore. He's not the guy across the field. Stephon Diggs really kind of ruins his role in that offense.
So I'll ask you, how do you feel about my next pick, which is Deontay Johnson?
I hate it because that was who I was looking at, but then I realized there's another guy. I was like, in case I don't get him, I have another guy in my pocket that I'm ready to take.
Yeah, Vitali's been preaching the Steelers comeback year for Big Ben for a little while now.
And I like Deontay a lot more than John Brown because I think, one, Deontay is a more talented receiver than John Brown, and two, the Steelers have shown that they can support two high-end fantasy wide receivers before. Big Ben has shown that he does not care. He'll go out and throw it 700 times a season. Obviously, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but Deontay Johnson has a much higher ceiling to me than John Brown, where you aren't going to see those high-volume passing attacks come out of Buffalo.
Yeah, John Brown's a guy I was a fan of last year just because he has that burner speed and he can take advantage of a guy with a cannon arm like Josh Allen. But with the introduction of Stephon Diggs, I think that role is diminished by a little more than I'm willing to buy in on.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and just lock up Jared Cook here as my tight end in the 9th round. It feels like I'm not reaching too much on a tight end. I feel like he's a very sure thing over some of the other guys going in his area, like Higbee and guys like that. So I'll go ahead with the earlier guy that I'm comfortable with.
Locking up old man Cookie Monster.
How did you steal my picking after me?
Well, you should have picked him if you were.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. It was like I looked at Deontay and I was thinking he's a solid wide receiver that could really give me some good bench depth. But Jared Cook is points I can put on the board, and he is in a great offense in New Orleans. I want a piece of that, and I'll take it for cheap in the 9th round.
Sure.
Yeah, I like that.
I am going to go, because mock drafts are a time just to test things out to see what your team looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I admit that while I'm not the biggest Higbee fan, I could be wrong on him.
Yeah.
End of the 9th round, though, that seems like a reasonable place where if I'm going to take a risk on Higbee, I can draft him. I do still need a tight end, and if Higbee continues what he did at the end of last year, he's a steal at the end of the 9th round. So I'll go ahead. I'll grab him. I'll grab him quite a bit later than where most people have him going, and then at 10-2, because I do have that rollover, I'll turn around and I'll grab the guy I was really looking at there, and I'll grab Latavius Murray. As I've stated in the past, I love owning Latavius Murray where I can. I think he has standalone value due to his role in the offense, and if Alvin Kamara ever goes down, you've got a starting running back who's shown he can do it on one of the best offenses in the league.
Yeah, he was the guy I was looking at there because I was really looking to get another running back in there to shore up some bench places. But it seems like a lot of late round guys who I thought would slip a lot more have been kind of getting scooped up. That is a downside to waiting on your quarterback and waiting on your tight end, is that these later guys who you might be using to fill up bench spots are going to get taken. Yeah. But I'm still that's a nice reason to go for a guy like Fant or Hawkinson and save that 9th round pick for a guy James White, Matt Breida, Latavius Murray, these guys who have value in these later rounds and can help fill the position. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take a guy who I'm not a huge fan of in standard. I'm going to go ahead and take Tariq Cohen because he at least has a cemented role in that Chicago offense. So, yes, he doesn't get points for those catches, but he's still getting yardage and he's still going to get usage.
Sure. Yes. He's someone who, in a pinch, you can roll out there and he's not going to put up a zero for you.
He's not Tony Pollard, who's going to have zero value unless Zeke goes down. Then he has minor value because we've already seen what Pollard is.
What are you looking at here, Frankie?
I was honestly looking at tight end, but I'm going to go ahead and pick and start taking my dart throws. I'm going to draft CeeDee Lamb here. I think he's in a really good spot to be, maybe not, I wouldn't say crucial piece in that offense because they do have Cooper, they do have Gallup, who are kind of those solidified 1-2s. But I think he could still have some big games if either one of them were to go down. I mean, he has a good quarterback throwing with football. So I'm willing to take the dart throw in the 10th round now on a guy that I do believe in. I don't know if he's quite there yet.
I believe in him in Dynasty. Especially with the no preseason. I have no interest in rookie wide receivers this year.
Yeah, it's going to take a really special talent to be able to come in and pick up an NFL-style offense with no lead-up time and only 10 days to work out in pads.
Yeah, I think that might be the biggest detractor for me.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's still a late-round pick for you, so he's not hurting you too much, but I think it's just this is where you got to take guys who are you already know what they are, and they have a clear spot in that offense. So that way, when you need this guy for a COVID-related injury or something like that, you have something sure.
Yeah, I am going to go ahead and not take a rookie here. I am going to take Mr. Golden Tate.
Yeah, that's a good pick there.
A guy who I've always liked in the past, and I mean, for 11th round, I mean,
You kind of know what you're getting with him.
yeah, I mean, he does have that little bit of injury risk. He has had some issues in the past, but I'm willing, like, for a guy who has always produced, I'm willing to take a shot on him in the 11th because I mean, at the end of the day, he's coming off my bench. He's not starting. He may just be a filling guy for bye weeks.
Sure.
But I'm confident in his ability.
Yeah, here, like I said, this is kind of my board's just full of tight ends and quarterbacks, so I don't want to buy back in on. So I'm just looking around at a bunch of guys who I'm not hugely in.
Your boy
to.
Brashad Perriman's still on the board.
Yeah, I
Get you a piece of that Jets offense.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's nothing here that I'm super interested in, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take a guy I think is a nice little dart throw. I'm going to go ahead and get N'Keal Harry.
Sure.
He's a big body receiver, first-round pick, and he was considered one of the best receivers in his draft. He just happened to be injured that year, and now he's got Cam Newton, who has shown to be able to produce with a big body receiver like him, i.e. Kelvin Benjamin, and bunches of funches.
Yeah.
I'm not going to overthink my pick. I'm going to draft the only rookie that I really have a ton of interest in this year, and that's Justin Jefferson. Big reason that I have interest in him, but not some of the other guys, is that unlike these Jerry Judys and CeeDee Lambs that we know went to, teams with maybe you would say more high-powered offenses, Justin Jefferson we know is not competing with targets for anyone except for Adam Thielen. They can't feed Thielen 30 balls a game or 25 balls a game. He's going to have to catch something. So unless he just sucks, I think he's about as safe as you can get with a rookie wide receiver because he is going to have to capture some of that passing offense in Minnesota just to allow their offense to function.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to turn around and in the 12th round, because there have been, I don't necessarily believe the rumblings, but I think this is the round where you would want to go ahead and draft people like this. I'm actually going to draft Chase Edmonds at 12-2.
Mm-hmm.
There have been a few minor rumblings that Chase Edmonds might still have a role in that offense, or a bigger role than people think he's going to have, despite Kenyon Drake being there.
Mm-hmm.
We know he can perform if Kenyon Drake isn't there, and honestly, if they're going to be running 65, 70, 75 plays a game, Kenyon Drake can't take all of those carries. So Chase Edmonds is going to have to do some of that. I honestly think the more I look at that offense and the more I go in and sort of flush out my stats for it, he could have a standalone role, a flex or bye week fill-in role with tons of upside if Kenyon were to go down.
Yeah.
So here there's, like I said, once again, just not a lot jumping off this board right now. So I have an older tight end, so I'm actually looking right now to go ahead and grab me a guy who's younger and could potentially be that, safety blanket for my tight end position.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and take Austin Hooper here. I was a little more interested in Hurst because I think that team's better for offensive.
But he went the pick before you.
He did. I'm not too broken up about it. Like I said, this is supposed to be just a safety blanket. If Jared Cook is older, he is up there, so he has a bigger injury risk this year. And if Hooper breaks out and I'm wrong about him, then he's sitting on my bench ready to go.
He's your safety torch.
Yeah, as far as looking at breakout guys, guy I'm going to pick here is going to be my tight end, and I guess we'll roll the dice and see how that goes.
Rob Gronkowski.
No.
I hear he could break out real big.
Madden's ready to ride him. 95 overall.
I was initially looking at Gesicki, but I am going to go with my original choice here, and that is Mr. Noah Fant. Your lock is
his last name wrong.
Fant.
Fanta.
However, you want
to you say it very pretentiously, like
yes,
Noah Fant.
Mr. Font.
Noah Fant.
Also, disclaimer: however you say your last name, I'm not trying to make fun of you intentionally.
Oh no, I'm making fun of Frankie. If that actually is how his last name is said, then I apologize to Noah Fant for screwing up the pronunciation.
Yeah. So this round right here, I don't know what I think they were talking to each other, the AI, because that run, it pretty standard. Joshua Kelly, Bashar Perriman, Watkins, Rob Gronkowski, Curtis Samuel. But then it's just a straight run on running backs: Naheem Hines, Jamal Williams, Justin Jackson, A.J. Dillon, Carlos Hyde, Antonio Gibson. I'm pretty broken up because I was actually thinking about grabbing me some A.J. Dillon for a change.
I was hoping to get either Gibson or Joshua Kelly at my next pick. So
I don't like a lot of running backs on the board.
to see both of them go off the board makes me sad.
And I'm probably going to regret this pick, but I am going to pick Damian Harris here.
So I think it's hard to regret a pick in the 13th round.
Which was going to be my next point. It's like, I could regret it as far as like, oh, he doesn't produce, but at the end of the day, it is a 13th round pick.
Well, and he's someone who we've seen Sony Michel have knees of glass. He's someone who easily could return, at least top 36 value at the running back position, despite being drafted in the 13th round, and all he needs is Sony Michel to just miss time.
Yeah, I was really hoping for either A.J. Dillon, Damian Harris, Antonio Gibson, those guys. I was looking for them in these later rounds here. So I'm going to not try and zig into the run of running backs, and I'm going to go for a guy I do still like here. I'm going to go ahead and go take Paris Campbell. Once again, I've talked about this guy a bunch. He could be the number one on the Colts with a quarterback that can produce, low-end wide receiver 1, high-end 2 numbers out of his wide receivers given the talent. And T.Y. Hilton is a shell of what he used to be. And we could see a season where Paris is the top option.
I do actually really like that pick there.
I think that Ty could still turn in a very good season.
Yeah,
he's only 31, and like we've seen wide receivers be able to play well into their 30s before. Obviously, he might be a little bit more risky than like a Julio Jones, who's also over the hill a little bit. But I don't hate T.Y. Hilton truthers. I think that especially with Phillip Rivers under center, there is a world where T.Y. does get back into like that top 18 fantasy receiver role.
Yeah.
I went ahead and took Baltimore at 13-11. I think it was just they had fallen too far for me, and I wanted to make sure that I locked up a good defense. And then actually at 14-2, because I'm not super confident in Higbee, I'm going to take Jonnu Smith and give myself a little bit of tight end depth. It's not something that I typically do. In this case, it's just I don't feel confident that Higbee is going to return starting tight end value, and I don't want to go fishing for tight end on the waiver wire. I'd rather just secure that depth and then hope that one of those two becomes the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back through the draft, I'm going to draft in a style that would be also more akin to our redraft league. Haven't seen it. Normally these rounds do have a lot more of those second quarterbacks going. I'm actually going to take a second quarterback here, just because if Matt Ryan doesn't have his up year again, he is a lot less of a sexy name to have for a long year.
Sure.
So I'll take another guy who I think has some great upside because of the amount of throwing he's going to have to do. I'm going to go ahead and just take Matt Stafford here. And like I said, it's another one of those. I'm going to go with safe picks where I know what I'm getting in these last two rounds because of COVID, increased injury risk, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was eyeing him if the draft client hadn't decided that I was getting Dak at 6'2", I'd probably be taking Matt Stafford right about now.
Oh yeah,
so.
you were sitting there looking for Gallup and just
I probably pressed the button.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, as being unconventional as this draft has been for me, I am going to take a second tight end, having a tight end that I'm not extremely confident in. I'm going to take Hawk here.
Yeah.
He's shown that he can have those big games, but he just got unlucky last year where injuries do happen.
Well, and one thing we're seeing too and I think this is something to consider that I actually hadn't, because I hadn't done a lot of, obviously we aren't a standard point league, so I hadn't done a lot of standard drafting, or any actually until this. It seems like pass catchers in standard point are falling a lot more than I thought they would, and the running back pool dries up a lot quicker.
Oh, yeah.
So if you are in a standard point league, you might actually want to wait until literally one of your last two picks to take a tight end, because I mean, there's still a bunch of good tight ends on the board right now, and we're at pick 15-7.
Yeah, and
whereas the running backs we're looking at are like at this point we're at like Malcolm Brown, Gio Bernard, Raquel Armstead, Anthony McFarland Jr. Like, I think that's something that our listeners could take advantage of if you're in standard leagues. Pump the brakes on tight end.
Yeah, and I mean I'm just gonna run out my team here and just take my defense. New Orleans. I mean that's pretty much it. I mean I stream defense anyway, so my typically doesn't matter who I take here.
You're just picking someone to pick someone.
Yep.
Fill the position. Figure it out later.
Highest ranked defense on the board. We're just rolling with them.
Sure. Yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah, like I said, I need a defense, so I'm going to go ahead and take the Chiefs, who had one of the best pass defenses towards the end of the league last year, and actually finished in third for INTs. So,
all right, the guy that I wanted to follow me fell to me. I'm going to use my last pick on Mr. Alan Lazard. He's like I was just saying, tight ends. He's another guy who I can't believe is still on the board at literally the second to last pick in the draft. I'll gladly take him for some additional wide receiver depth. It seemed like Aaron Rodgers and him had chemistry last year. If he can build on that, awesome. If he can't, I drafted him with my last pick. I cut him. All right, let's go ahead and jump to the standings here. I'm feeling pretty good about my performance in this draft. Frankie, why don't you take us away as the person who won the last mock draft?
Well, let me just pull mine up here. I think I won again.
Well, what did you get for your rank?
96 out of 100. Hey.
Very nice.
Woof. I mean, they were not as friendly to mine. I got a 79.
Yeah, I got a 92 out of 100 this time. So Frankie, you squeaked past me again.
But yeah, I think that I went a little bit more towards that, conventional side. I mean, I typically do like to go with that tight end early.
Sure.
And I think that these last two drafts have kind of helped me with that, where I haven't done that, and I think it's kind of paying off as far as like the algorithm or whatever it is rating me. I may employ this in our actual draft. Who knows?
Yeah, looking at my team here, I had pretty average rankings across the board. The only position that the draft client actually didn't like for me at all was tight end. It says that I had the seventh weakest tight end slot, but I'm third at quarterback, third at flex, third at DST. I have the third best bench. My wide receivers and starting running backs are 6 and 6, but that's pretty middle of the pack. So
yeah, honestly, when I look through this, I honestly feel like these Fantasy Pros draft client for their mock drafts do actually quite heavily weight the quarterback position more than I would expect. Because when I look back at you guys with two of the what they consider the upper tier quarterbacks, they don't really value the depth that you're getting for that one. I do definitely saw it where the hole came was I wasn't expecting the cavern at running back to happen.
Yeah.
So when I was seeing these values like Marquise Brown slipping where he did, Jared Cook still being on the board. So when I went and took those guys, but then like all these backup running backs I was looking at, like I remember I was looking at David Montgomery and I was like, okay, I think I can get him on the wraparound. He went immediately the pick after I locked in Jared Cook, and I was a little bummed on that one because I wanted him to actually be my fourth running back instead of Tariq Cohen, because I feel more confident with him there. It's just I think standard. When you're looking at standard, that just having those running backs is so valuable, especially with how the draft style is going, and having according to them having the a top tier quarterback that can win you weeks.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just as my final thought for this. That is a good thing to just remind our listeners about. We've talked about it in the past. Try to, because it does happen to people sometimes. Like I was saying, try to avoid getting cute with the ADP and thinking you can wait on players. If you want a player, draft the player.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times if you're sitting there looking at a player saying, "Ooh, he looks like a steal right about here," there's probably at least one other person in your draft who's also looking at him and thinking, "Ooh, he looks like a steal right about here," and the more you try and play with that, the more likely you are to miss those players. And there's no practice draft once your league kicks off. That's what mock drafts are for. But it's like once your actual draft is going, that's your actual draft. There's no take backsies. So if you miss a player, you miss a player.
Yeah, just up on the screen right now, I do have all the full rosters, barring I think the last bench spot.
Yeah.
But are there any rosters that particularly stick out to you as far as like weak points?
I mean, I don't typically like to really analyze the computer's rosters in mock drafts because they are computers.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a lot to be gained from that. The upside to this is more the draft client is smart and it's going to have all of them draft basically more or less average to above average teams.
Yeah, and they're also going to follow some of the trends. So it's like, even though we know a lot of people that don't really go quarterback early, no one we know hasn't taken a quarterback in the second round for a little while now. Patrick Mahomes going at the back at the second would be an eyebrow raiser from me. Whereas when I look through this, most of these seem fine. Like I said, a lot of strategies I wouldn't go with, but then again, standard not being our forte for a few years now has kind of gotten me out of practice with it. Whereas, it's just one of those things. It's good to look back and see how things fell, but honestly, I don't think there's anything. There's nothing that jumps off the page at me. Whereas when we draft with other people in our best ball leagues, we can see those eyebrow raisers, like someone doing double tight ends.
Yeah.
In the second, third round, stuff like that.
All right, well, that'll do it for us here. Just as a reminder to everyone, make sure that if you want to sign up for the giveaway we're doing, that you do it before the start of August, because that is when we're wrapping up the giveaway, and then the winner will be announced on our Twitter. So keep your eye out for that. You do have limited time to sign up, and we'll see you all Thursday.
One more episode.
Hot take summer.
Well, one more episode for July.
Yeah.